Epicurus talks about friends, freedom, and an analysed life. And my basic point is that working in an office robs you of those things if you're not careful. So we're so bloody busy that we don't see our friends. We go and manufacture new friends in the office, which gets us trapped there. We're losing our freedom and all of our extracurricular activities, the things we actually enjoy. And most importantly, we don't have time, because we're always bloody exhausted, to live an analysed life. You've only got 80 years-ish. If you're not thinking about why you're doing what you're doing, then what's the point? You always take me on the most romantic of dates, don't you?
Yeah.
You brought me to Melbourne Cemetery. Why are we here?
Melbourne General Cemetery. Why are we here? Well, it's open space. It's between where I am and where you are. And it's not a place that many people go to, I don't think. Cemeteries.
I used to live near here, so I've been here quite a lot. It's fucking awesome. Cemeteries are great fun.
It is. I think when architects travel, there's a lot of great cemeteries in the world, but I don't think that's somewhere that people go to. I think it's a bit morbid or something.
Oh, they're really interesting spaces.
Yeah.
Like throughout history. But there's so many great contemporary ones. We saw that one in 2010.
In Berlin?
Yeah, that one.
That's a crematorium.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's you've been to, with Tom Wheeler, you've been to Brion Tomb?
That's right.
By Carlos Scarpa?
Hey, look who lives here. The King. Did you guys know that the King was buried in Melbourne, Australia? Professional.
Yeah, and people thought you really got angry with me with the Patreon.
Yeah, no, I've got some people that just gave me a note saying, "Hey, are you okay? Are you and Kevin fighting?" It's like, no, that was called acting. That's called acting. I'm a very serious actor. So believable, then.
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm so angry at you. You take that down right now. I'm okay, people.
Well, today is a revisit of your work-life balance essay, I think.
Oh, okay, yes. It's been 8 years since I wrote that.
Yeah.
If you asked me what my greatest achievement was, all these awards, I don't think I'll ever be remembered for that. Helping to create Nightingale housing, that's pretty cool, but I don't think I'll be remembered for that. I think it might be that essay.
Yeah. That has changed a lot of things. I think the outlook for a lot of people in our profession.
And I heard that there were actual the very significant practices that almost overnight had to change the way they worked, because instead of their staff working till 8 o'clock every night, they got up all together, sent each other a note saying, right, 5:30 we're out. They had to go and employ a handful of extra people because they weren't getting all this extra free labour.
So you want to explain to the uninitiated what that essay was about?
So it was for a website called Parlour, and it was also on ArchDaily. And really, it was called Work-Life Balance, but really it was about exploitation in offices, and how especially young architects and graduates are ripe for the picking to be exploited, and how, especially at the time, it was ubiquitous that people were meant to hand over their lives to their employer. They were meant to work endless hours and be at the beck and call of their employer, all, to the detriment of their mental and physical health in the long run. Yeah, so Zizek says that, basically the whole labour force is being manipulated because everybody's been called a manager of this and that, an associate of this and that, and we've been given lounges and kitchens and free food and drinks, and that's a way of sort of enslaving us, making us feel indebted to our employer, and this idea of employer as friend, so therefore it makes it really hard to protest our working conditions. And I think architecture has been nailed by that perfectly, where everybody thinks they can go up through the ranks and become a director or something one day. They think that their employers are their friends, and it is through those conditions that people are being really manipulated. Oh, come on, we're all working hard, you're part of the team. Why won't you stick around for a couple of extra hours and we'll get this done for the good of the project? When really it's the good of the profit line. I've always said that if any of my staff work overtime, I basically have to thank them for gifting me $300. Every hour you do for free, you're giving away your leisure time. Every hour you do for free is just pure profit.
Because in an office, the biggest expense is wages, right?
Yeah, it's staff. It's a labour cost. So we're not all going to be managers. We're not all going to go up through the ranks and be directors. We need to realise we are actually a labour force. We're applying critical thinking, and that's all very important. But we're actually pumping out documents and information. and you need people on the tools creating drawings. That's a labour force. And in terms of the building industry, we're the ones that are the most overworked and probably nowadays the least paid.
Yeah, well, that's a whole negotiation issue that we will make a different episode about.
Yeah, exactly. It's as though negotiation and money are dirty words because we're artists. We must suffer for our art. Bullshit. Like, how much art are you doing in the office? Like, I run my business. I do most of the design in the office, and I reckon I spend only a few % of my day being the artist designing. Most of it I'm trawling through shit trying to get these very complex buildings to work.
So a lot of that it's got to do with architecture school too. You know, this idea of all-nighter was the norm.
Yep.
But I think in hindsight though, and having been teaching for many years, in hindsight you really think it's actually just really bad time management.
It is, but I can remember the first day of university architecture school, the dean said, "Get ready for all-nighters." And I was like, what? That's ludicrous. Why are you saying that? As though I've come to do a tertiary study and they're saying time management, you know, just is to be avoided. It's madness.
Look, in hindsight, as I said, I think it is about time management, but at the same time is to learn to realize that you make mistakes. You spend time on the wrong things. You put priorities in the wrong things, and not being able to analyze what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what's the most important bit that deserves the time and energy. That takes skills and years of practice. And so in some ways, to stumble and make the mistakes is a good way to learn. However, when you get out to the practice, in the world of practice, I think that needs to change. But the thing is, unfortunately, I think that expectation of overworking is a problem. And I don't think it should be, because it's not that kind of learning environment anymore. We've got a lot more people with experience and should lead it in such a way that it doesn't require that overwork. So hang on, this is quite interesting. It's this weird path that got here, and then somehow we ended up in this strange junction that kind of goes nowhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of these through this cemetery. Like, I've tried to ride my bike through here a few times and you just end up turned about. It's actually one of these places, I'm quite good with directions, this place will turn you around. It actually, like, is scary. It's a cemetery that if you come here at dusk, suddenly you're like, wait, how do I get out? Because it's turned you at 90 degrees.
And the gate's closed.
Yeah, they lock it.
Yeah.
There's no negotiation, just suddenly you're locked in. Love it. Let's go that way. Yeah, one of the things that I'm so thankful for is what somebody said to me, practice doing 9 to 5, like as a student. So I did really well at university, and seriously, I was at my desk by 9 a.m. and I really tried to wrap up by dinner time and have a life outside of that. And that was one of the gifts of education, was another student just saying, treat it like a job. And the good thing about that is I think I was actually more creative because I wasn't exhausted all the time. I had sort of structure around me, which meant that I could rigorously critique things and then respond to them, instead of being sleep deprived and basically over it because I hadn't gone for a jog or hung out with my mates or anything like that.
I've heard this from some of the universities, actually Helen Norrie from UTAS. She said that when the university switched from having 24-hour access studios to limited time, so first thing in the morning till late at night, but they lock it. Instead of some unis still have 24-hour access, this is a bad idea, this is muddy as. The students actually become more productive. They get up, they just know that's the time, they need to work within that time.
Well, this is interesting because that also leads on to studio culture in offices too. If you end up in a studio where it's just the general vibe to stay late, and you look bad because you leave early, so you start to stay late, everybody else does, it starts to be self-perpetuating, then you start to see your friends less. So then you start to hang around with your mates in the office. They start to become your friends, which again feeds into the idea that might as well stay here because this is where my friends are. And it works perfectly for an employer. Thank you very much. Your whole life and culture and support network is now based in the office. So you end up gifting all these free hours again.
Going back to the idea of creativity and 9 to 5, and again, I think that goes back to education. I think to be taught to analyze what you're proposing and the systematic way to find out the problems you need to solve, and you go and solve them, rather than just sitting there waiting for creativity to hit or whatever it is. It's, you know, that the fact that you are, as we've been saying a lot, it is actually creative problem solving.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you need to set up the goals.
Absolutely.
And break them down into smaller bits where you can achieve, you know, step by step, rather than trying to look for this one big idea.
And that's good critical thinking. The biggest problem, and this could be another episode, you hear these endless debates, is architecture art? Well, A, it's not. B, who cares? It's a distraction, that question. Like, it is a series of problems that you need to solve through critical thinking. But actually, that's almost every profession now. We live in such a complex world that you have to use analytical thought to solve problems. So let's pull the art idea away from architecture. Let's go and creatively solve problems, and then we can hopefully get away from this idea of suffering for your art. I'm the suffering artist. Like that's perfect for being paid for, you know, not being paid a living wage, because that's the cool thing about being an artist, isn't it? Is being on the struggle street.
And I think a lot of people don't really know why they're doing architecture.
Yes, this is a big thing, Kev, that you're always spot on about. The question why. It should be with everything you do in life, why? But you ask people why they're studying architecture, they don't even know.
No. Or what they, you know, or in passion, what they like to do in life. Then again, you know, just what do they enjoy doing? That's something I ask every student at the start of, you know, first meeting them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them struggle. It's like, why am I expected to have some kind of passion on anything else in life? It's like, well, maybe they kind of can marry and you make them come together.
My architecture improved a huge, and my enthusiasm for architecture improved a huge amount in third year when the lecturer asked me that same question, and I said, well, I like skateboarding and I like comics. And he went, there you go.
Yeah, it's great.
Skateboarding is a modern critique of the
urban spaces,
fabric.
yeah.
And comic books, Jesus, look at the artwork, look at the line weights, like perfect. And I immediately just went, that's what I'm interested in, and I've got this toolkit, which is architecture, and I melded the two, and suddenly, you know, I became the architect I am. But when you have people just going, I don't know, I had a certain mark and this was the only thing I could get into, so meh.
And that goes with, you know, I think a great TED talk is Simon Sinek's Start With Why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Yeah. Why do you do it?
Yeah.
And if you believe in it, then you do it with passion and energy.
And
if you don't, it's just a job, and you know. But for money, you know, they're a much better job than architecture.
Exactly.
For
if
money,
it's just a job, then treat it that way. Do your 9 to 5.
But have some passion though. If you on anything else but that, that's fine. But at least have some bloody passion.
Yeah.
Because what's the line? The quote you had?
Kushner. Hang on. Harold Kushner. No one ever said on their deathbed, God, I wish I'd have spent more time in the office. I love that. And I guess that's why we're in a cemetery.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, you're a long time dead.
And there's a piece of stone, and often with a tiny little bit of story about you in a sentence. You can tweet that.
Yeah.
But that's it. What is it about you?
So if you're working overtime, unpaid overtime on toilet details.
Although toilets can be fun.
Exactly, you've got to make them fun though. But if you're not having fun, then you've really got to assess why you're doing what you're doing and how you're just being exploited.
And there was a follow-up on one of the comments from our episode last week about job interviews.
Yeah.
Someone said, well, that's all well and good because people know what your office is like, but in Central Europe, for example, they're like dictators, and you know, it's like yes sir, yes sir. They don't treat people well, apparently. I'm
sorry, but for a couple of 100 years, there's been a labour movement that shows what you can do if you do bargaining, collective bargaining. And I just can't believe that architects don't get together, and instead of encouraging each other to work longer hours, they don't actually get together and form a union to actually get better working conditions. Like I hear that kind of stuff and think, don't do it on your own.
Yeah, because there's a lot of expectation in Europe, I think, in that there's still this idea of the, you know, working for the master. So you're just working for free. I think even Japan as well, you know, there's
Absolutely.
This story of people just working for minimal money for working, you know, underneath the tutelage of a certain master.
Yeah, to have a name on a CV. And I actually, when I've got somebody that, you know, I've had some interviews in the past where people have turned up and gone, oh, I was in Toyo Ito's office, and you ask them what they really did, and they worked on endless competitions and they got paid nothing. And I actually think that's...
And 16 hours a day?
I think it's to their detriment. I look at them and just go, well, okay, so you're not a critical thinker because you've just gone and slaved your butt off for 2 years to get this name on your CV. I think it's actually compelling and negative that they've gone and done that.
Comment your comment in the comments.
First job I had was for a heritage architect in Brisbane. It just seemed like the most boring office. And I had a look at it, and they had all these awards for heritage. And I realized as I looked, they were just really rigorous, and they were also really humble, and they were nice people. And one of them was an associate professor at the university too. So my first job, I didn't go to the cool kids. I went to these boring, diligent, beautiful architects who weren't interested in doing overtime because they had lives. That's what you aim for on your CV. That's what you aim for in getting experience. Don't sell your soul to architects. So where are you going to cut in Thriller part?
Yeah, can you do the dance?
Thriller!
You do the dance?
Yeah, I don't really know how it goes. Bit of that, bit of shoulder stuff, bit of red jackets. Oh!
Do you like visiting cemeteries? Have you been to any famous cemeteries?
It's actually cathartic. Seriously, guys, we've got, what, 80 years on this earth? It's bloody short. It's a gift. The likelihood of you being alive, read Bill Bryson's A Brief History of Everything. The likelihood of you being alive is unlikely. Like, it's so unlikely you're alive. It's so rare that life even exists in the universe. You've got a tiny amount of time. Don't spend it stressing. So have a walk around a cemetery because it's a great catharsis. It's a great way to get your head up and think, holy moly, I'm lucky to be existing. Let's enjoy it. Let's go walk around cemeteries with cameras looking like weirdos. And if you want to support the channel, Kevin's made a Patreon page too, so you can subscribe there and support
and
us.
Get some extra footage, extra stupidity that didn't make the public cut.
Yeah, if you want to see some shenanigans, then go to Patreon. Links in the comments. Thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. Seriously, we want to see some great comments from this episode. What do you reckon of modern working conditions in offices in general, but also in architectural offices? Leave a comment. We love you guys. See you in the next one.